Now is the time we bring you the virtual stage of our Achieving Optimal Health Conference at Georgetown University. To experience this talk with all the videos, slides, and graphics, go to bbrconsulting.us and click on Conference. One more time, visit bbrconsulting.us. Thanks for staying curious and for living your best life with us.
The way we take care of ourselves is ever evolving. And what we know for sure is that our mind and spirit are linked to our physical body,
And that our wellness seems to extend into our communities and the planet we all share.
it is very, very clear that wellness is interconnected.
We love spending time with you to explore and practice the breakthroughs, the insights, and the passions of incredible people helping us all see the world in a whole new light.
This is Health Gig.
Muneeza Ahmed is an intuitive medicine woman. She's also the creator of the Muneeza Method, which has helped thousands of people receive the information they need to heal. She's also the author of a book called Healing Chutneys and Sauces. So, Muneeza, welcome to Health Gig.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to have a conversation with both of you today.
We are too, Muneeza. We're thrilled you're with us.
Tricia and I had a wonderful conversation with you yesterday and had the opportunity to get to know you a little bit, but we really want our listeners to know more about you. So can we just begin with the question, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started?
My story really starts sitting outside my doctor's office in my car, exhausted. I had just had my 12th doctor's visit in 6 months, and I had tried calling my husband to update him about the appointment. He didn't answer the phone, and my mother also didn't answer her phone. And I was sitting there feeling completely alone. And I was near tears because once again, my doctor had no answers for me. The visit was over in 10 minutes. I barely talked for 5. And the doctor looked at my chart, gave me a quick diagnosis, and he says, well, the reason I was so exhausted is because I had chronic fatigue syndrome. And he said I had Hashimoto's and that I was very sensitive. All he offered me was more medication, and all that did was manage my symptoms. And I was sitting there and I thought, this couldn't possibly be all the answers there are. This couldn't be that I was going to be sick for the rest of my life. And there had to be a way to heal and get better. And I was going to find it. I was 27 years old and I was newly married and I was scared. I was overwhelmed and I felt completely unheard by my medical doctors. And I really lost hope for my future. But as I sat there in the car, I remembered my grandfather's words when I was a child, ringing in the back of my brain, going, there's a cure for everything in nature, and it's stated in the Quran. So I decided that I was going to take matters into my own hands. You're like, I'll ask a different doctor. I'll go to Dr. Google, right? So I went to Dr. Google. You know, we're talking 17 years ago. Google wasn't as helpful then as it is now. And I started to research my symptoms. But I did make headway. And over the next few months, I spent like over 1,000 hours like studying how to increase my health and my well-being. And I was desperate. So I started to become an expert in my own health. I started to research and I discovered that food would be pivotal to healing my symptoms. So I focused on removing inflammatory foods. I increased hydration. I started a specific supplement routine, which I kind of figured out from my research, like what to do. And what happened in the next few months, though, was nothing short of a miracle. And I went from being completely exhausted to waking up feeling better than I had in years. I went from having no answers to having a clear plan that was actually giving me results that no doctor could provide me. And I went from managing my symptoms with medications to healing my symptoms through food. And most of all, I got my life back. And so that's where my story started. For the past 15 years, I've helped over 10,000 people, just like the listeners in your audience from all over the world, to reverse chronic autoimmune symptoms, stubborn symptoms that just won't go away. And like many of you, I knew in my bones that something wasn't right. I knew the doctors, they didn't have the answers. And even though I was relying on medications and I was going to them, like I was being the good patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they were giving me was not the answer. It wasn't helping. No matter where anyone is, wherever you are, no matter how poor your health is, how old you are, whatever you are up against in life, you can be healthy again.
I love what your grandfather said. There's a cure for everything in nature.
And that the body wants to heal itself, right? Given all the right things and all the things that support it, it will heal.
100%. The body knows how to heal. And in fact, the word health, right? Even the word health, the first 4 letters of the word health are heal. We can get to health by healing, and it's embedded in us. Our body innately knows, just like we have evidence, when handled the right way, our bones can heal themselves. I mean, doctors don't heal our bones, they set them so the bones can heal, right? Or if you have a wound on the skin or an injury, we observe that even if you don't do anything, it will heal.
Right.
So not only do we have that ability on the outside of our bodies, we have that ability on the inside of our bodies, the parts we cannot see, the organs. I mean, we often focus on our brain or our heart, but what about our liver and our spleen and our kidneys and our intestines and our colons and all the parts that we don't see, our thymus gland, thyroid glands? Everything has the power and the ability to heal. And why it does? Because it's made by a higher power, in my opinion. That higher power is more powerful than anything else created here on earth that's man-made. So this is what I know drives me in my faith and in my work, because bringing people back to this faith that they can heal and the power is within them all along is, I think, a very potent place to land.
Beautifully said. What you've spent your years doing is looking for the root causes of illnesses. Can you explain that and why you think that's important? And you were explaining to us yesterday, you don't want to treat symptoms, you want to treat the root cause.
If you know the root cause of a problem, you can fix it, right? I mean, the first thing that I'd like to let people know about root causes of chronic illness, right? Because if you are told that we go to the doctor's offices, the first things that you'll hear are, well, an autoimmune illness is your body attacking itself, or that chronic illness symptoms, this is just genetic or congenital, like if it's a baby, or that it's in your head, or, oh, this is just hormonal. Oh, you're just having anxiety. Oh, this is just a panic attack. And we hear all these things. And maybe some of you and some of your listeners have heard these statements or sentiments from their doctors. So I'm here to tell you that chronic illness and autoimmune symptoms are not caused by any of those things. Your body does not attack itself. It does not know how to do that. Your body loves you unconditionally, and it only knows how to heal you. Chronic illness symptoms are not genetic. Our genes didn't just degrade in the last 50 years when chronic illness in the 1950s is when chronic illness became a big problem. It's not just the cards you're dealt with, because if you're told that, what's your response? You're like, it's just what I have going on.
Right.
But it's not true. And then people will say, well, what about the things that run in our family? Like I have addiction in my family, or I have cancer running in my family. I'll say to you, the truth is that root cause of chronic illness symptoms, they're not in your head, they're not hormonal. It is poisoning of our bodies, because our world is toxic. We hear this from environmentalists. We hear this from toxicologists. We hear this from science. It tells us all the time that we're dealing with toxic heavy metals and levels of radiation. And we hear all this all the time. So we're living in a world that isn't ideal. We're not made to live with so many poisons and toxins and pathogens that are at the root of these issues. So when people say to me, well, it runs in my family, it's not passed on through your genes. It's passed on through the blood. It's passed on through the seminal fluid that dad provides you at conception. It passes on through mother's blood and through the placenta into the baby. In Canada, a few years ago, I think 15 years ago, they had a study done with approximately, I think, 1,000 babies, and they tested the umbilical cord blood of babies, and they found over 400 chemicals and toxins in baby cord blood, which again tells us that this idea that there's poisons inside of us is actually based in science and truth.
That's just so fascinating.
Is it possible to reverse our symptoms, and how do you approach that?
Yeah, Dora, that's a really good question, because that is exactly the work that I do. And I identify four main sources of poisons. There's pathogens, there's toxic heavy metals, pesticides, radiation. And of the most important of these, I would say, are the pathogens. And the reason they're important is because they're the most overlooked. I think everybody will agree. Rachel Carson wrote the book
Silent Spring.
Silent Spring, and we know the work of many activists in the area of water poisoning or pesticide poisoning and things like that. But the thing that gets missed that actually medical medium brought to light is the pathogen explosion that we're in, and nobody's really talking about it.
When you say pathogen, can you explain that?
Yeah, it's a big word, right? So by pathogen, I mean viruses and bacteria, and mostly viruses. We're talking about the herpetic family of viruses. So it's not like a cold bug or a flu virus, right? It's not one of those that arrives, gives you a bunch of symptoms, and then goes away. We're talking about herpetic viruses that create chronic symptoms over long periods of time. And they can be low grade, underlying, and then they can amp up at certain times in your life. And these include things like the Epstein-Barr virus, the shingles virus, which is not to be confused with chickenpox. It includes cytomegalovirus. It includes the herpes simplex viruses, 1, 2. It includes also HHV6, which is the human herpes virus family, all the way from 6 upwards to beyond 15, 16. So there's a lot of them. And so I know that it can sound really scary to hear the names of these bugs because you're like, oh my gosh, because we just went through a pandemic and now you're hearing about another bug and oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it can be hard to hear, but don't fear because there's so many solutions that you have that you can use because once you're aware what's causing your symptoms, you have then the empowerment to shift that. I want to make it simpler for people to understand how to approach this. So you want to think of pathogens like as though you have a rodent infestation in your home, right? So say it's mice or rats or something. And when the exterminator comes to your home, what's the first thing that he tells you? The first thing he tells you is to look for food sources. And the second thing he tells you is he looks for us to see where they may be living and he sets up traps to kill them. So just like with the exterminator and rodents, you have to eliminate foods from your diet that the pathogen eats and loves because when it poops this toxic poop, which is what causes inflammation in our bodies. In order to start to reverse symptoms, you have to kill off this remaining bug in your system so that you can heal. So one of the first steps that I recommend for eliminating pathogens is to remove eggs from the diet. And I know, but pathogens love them more than you do. And eggs are the number one food source for pathogens.
Oh,
So eliminating them from your diet actually kickstarts you in the right direction.
so eggs in all forms, like even eggs that are in recipes that are baked or something, or every egg?
All forms, even your backyard chicken egg, it doesn't matter. The most pure, biodynamic, organic egg. Dora, I know it sounds hard to imagine, but I read actually a lot of medical journals. And when you read about studies in medical journals, they will actually tell you in the abstract, they'll be like, this study was conducted by using petri dishes of egg cells with pathogens. So I mean, it's documented in medical literature that eggs are used for pathogen testing and pathogen growth. Because of that testing, we know that they thrive on egg cells. I always like to talk about one thing you can remove and then one thing you can add in. So the second most powerful step is to add in celery juice every morning on an empty stomach, and you will feel immediate results from doing this. You might find yourself in the bathroom more, eliminating poison out of your system, which is a good thing. But celery juice is the single most potent anti-bug medicine.
Celery juice. Okay.
Yeah.
And how much celery do you recommend every morning?
I recommend starting off with about 16 ounces of pure juice. I know people like to add like lemon to it or cucumbers to it. And I would say don't follow that impulse. Have it completely plain on an empty stomach in the morning. And you will start to notice things like increased energy without eating coffee. Like literally people have used celery juice to let go of their coffee addiction. People have gotten their energy back. People start to feel their gut improves. It's also the number one food for improving gut health. So it's really a powerhouse. I mean, it helps the brain. It has a perfect neurotransmitter profile for the brain. It has pre-methylated vitamin C that the liver does not need to break down. So it boosts the immune system, it boosts the liver, it literally boosts every single body system that there is.
So every morning, and how many stalks is that for 16 ounces about? Do you know?
Depending on the size of the bunch of celery that you get,
Right.
probably a half of a big bunch. But if you want to measure it more accurately, Costco actually sells, because of this trend, washed, cut, bagged celery for juicing.
Oh,
And one bag of the Costco celery makes 32 ounces. So it's double, just so people have a reference.
and you want that to be organic.
It is organic, sold in Costco. And if you don't find it organic, that's still okay. If it's not organic, wash it. I use a drop of dish soap, scrub it, and still get a lot of benefit.
We heard a lot about celery juice and, it's been out there, but now it seems like it is having a resurgence of recognition. But you're saying it's solid, it should be a base.
It has been a base for myself and my family for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And it has been a base for many of my clients. And while you can still start healing, if you cannot handle celery juice, if people come back to me and say, can't handle it, because it is strong herbal medicine, right? So if you cannot handle it, I recommend using cucumbers instead. Also, I recommend if you really struggle with it, then start with a teaspoon.
And it's in the mixer, like you're taking it all whole. You're not juicing the celery. You're eating the celery.
It is juiced through a juicer.
Oh, okay. So it's not like you put it in your Vitamix.
No.
You're like pure juice. Oh, so you need a juicer and then you do that. Okay. I've been doing that all wrong.
While you like it much better as a juice compared to just blending it into
Okay. Good to know. So something else that we talked about yesterday that you said was so important was the power of the mind and mindset. Can you talk about that? Because we think everybody needs to hear this.
So I talk to people because of the myths that are surrounding how symptoms happen, like you have autoimmune illness, your body's attacking itself, it's in your head, it's your hormones. I think that those types of ideas actually really mess with our mind and our hopefulness for healing. What I would love for people to walk away with today, all the listeners today, is that the power of healing is immeasurable. The human body is 100% healable, and shifting your beliefs and thoughts from, I can't heal, I don't have hope, it's in my genes, like there's nothing I can do about this, to I can heal, is critical for the way you're motivated to help yourself as you move forward in life. And the reason that we need to talk about this is because when you don't have hope, you won't take the necessary steps to heal. But when you do have hope, then you're willing to do whatever it takes. That is probably the most important thing I want people to walk away with. My father had rheumatoid arthritis for 30 years. And 10 years ago, after watching my father suffer with debilitating pain, fatigue, I started talking to him about creating a food and supplement plan to reverse his symptoms. And at that point, he had tried just about everything to get better. And he was not buying what I was trying to share with him. And he didn't think it would work. He's like, look, I've been all over the world. He went to Europe. He went to America. He went to Malaysia, Indonesia, like all over the world, trying to find help for the debilitating pain that he was experiencing. So he agreed to take the supplements I recommended, but then he just said that he couldn't change his diet. So many of the people listening here, because beyond eggs, there's 6 main foods that feed the pathogens. There's eggs, dairy, gluten, corn, soy, canola. And soy, corn, canola are genetically modified, so it's really important to learn about why to avoid them. So how do you remove these foods? They're in everything. So my father was feeling overwhelmed, and maybe the listeners are listening to this and feeling overwhelmed as well. But I was in my dad's corner, like I am with all my clients. So when he said he couldn't make too many changes at once, I said, okay, no problem. Let's move in baby steps. When he needed to slow down, we did. When he felt strong enough to speed up, we ramped up. And when he really struggled, like when I told him to add in more greens, I provided him a creative solution to help him nail that goal. And he's been working on his health for 10 years with dialing in food, supplements, detoxification. And he's practically today pain-free, able to move, work out, and live a fairly normal life that he couldn't do for almost 37 years.
Wow.
And a big part of that, when he resisted me, was mindset too. Like my father, I know maybe the listeners feel I don't have an option, or maybe you feel you can make some progress with your health, but there's no chance of a complete reversal. I've never heard of that, or I can't believe that. And I'm here to tell you that no matter where you are, there is more hope for better and improved health. And yes, there is a hope for total reversal of your symptoms. If my father could be pain-free after a lifetime of excruciating pain, you can too, and you can heal.
Such a hopeful message.
That
So,
is, Muneeza.
how
Thank
can
you for that.
people connect with you if they want to learn more?
I work with people in my intuitive healing community where you get teaching videos, you get a monthly live Q&A call with me where I kind of laser coach, and there's a 24/7 support in our community forum with our trained practitioners and direct access, which means that you will never again feel alone on your journey, because you do need support. Because, you know, a child doesn't learn to walk by themselves. They need help. They need to be encouraged. And that's what we're here to do, because many people are learning this information for the first time and don't know how to navigate it. And we're here to help figure all that out.
That's wonderful.
Muneeza, thank you. And thanks for taking the time to be with us on Health Gig.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Honestly, just giving me an opportunity to talk about my favorite subject, it's really always a blessing. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on Health Gig. We loved having you with us. We hope you'll tune in again next week. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and follow us on healthgigpod.com. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Doro.
Be well.